The government shutdown is almost over, but almost means days more of uncertainty and hassle, snarled air travel, and suspended nutrition benefits, to name just two. No shutdown ends without recriminations. Who caved? Who won? Was it all worth it? Displeased, House Democrat Ro Khanna airs his grievances. Thanksgiving is 17 days away. Will travel return to normal? And by normal, we mean normal crowds, delays, anxiety, you know, the stuff we crave. We'll find out. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. I have said it over and over. All government shutdowns end. When they do, it's because one side of the political argument yielded on a principle they had said over and over was unyieldable. Then the tallying begins. Who won? Who lost? It is a Washington game that most Americans understandably detest because Beltway gamesmanship leaves them out of the equation. If you are one of the 42 million Americans who receive nutrition benefits through SNAP, you have lost, because those benefits will remain in limbo, at least for the remainder of this week. If a recent flight of yours was delayed or canceled, you've lost unrecoverable time. If you're a federal worker who has gone without pay, you have lost the basic comfort of predictability. And for some of you, the stress has been too much, and you have quit, something you wouldn't have done absent this prolonged shutdown. All of you thus affected have wanted this shutdown to end, and so it appears it will, on mostly Republican terms. President Trump and fellow Republicans refused to give an inch on extending soon-to-expire Obamacare subsidies. Democrats fought for 40 days for a deal on their terms and got nothing. Defeat always leaves a bitter aftertaste, and all Democrats have as a chaser is the notion that fighting Trump has elevated health care as an issue and exposed his willingness to inflict harm on, his words, not mine, Democratic programs. Plus, as one Democrat told me today, 40 days ago, we still, his words, had an East Wing, and Trump hadn't had a Great Gatsby Halloween party. Those may become memorable shutdown images, and they might have even helped Democrats win big in last week's election. To recover, Trump is now offering cash checks from tariff revenue the Supreme Court, based on arguments just last week, may soon nullify. That rush to write checks speaks to an affordability dynamic Trump now seems hot to address, with a flurry of new ideas just this weekend: $2,000 checks, 50-year mortgages, and direct payments for health insurance. Who knows where any of that will go, but it's now part of shutdown theatrics. We will spend most of tonight's show going over all this, and we will follow the contours of the shutdown's end throughout the week. When all this started, we would open this program with a cavalcade of shutdown sound. Herewith, today's It's All About Over sound.
As we said from the beginning, the people's government cannot be held hostage to further anyone's political agenda. That was never right. And shutting down the government never produces anything.
I would encourage every member of this body, Democrat or Republican, pro-bill or anti-bill, not to stand in the way of our being able to deliver the coming relief quickly. The American people have suffered for long enough.
The American people have now awoken to Trump's health care crisis. Health care is once again at the forefront of people's minds. People now see that premiums are about to skyrocket. They're terrified about how they're going to pay for their insurance.
Our position as House Democrats has been crystal clear. We will sit down with any Republicans, anytime, any place, anywhere, in order to find a bipartisan path forward, but we're not down with their my way or the highway approach to governance.
Many of my friends are unhappy. They think we should have kept our government closed indefinitely to protest the policies of the Trump administration. I share their opinions of this administration, but cannot accept a strategy which wages political battle at the expense of my neighbor's paycheck or the food for his children.
We begin tonight with Daniela Diaz, who covers Congress for Notice. Remember, Notice stands for News of the U.S. Danielle, it's great to see you. This show lives in the moment, and as we speak, the Senate is moving towards some procedural votes to move all of this forward. Catch us up.
That's exactly right, Major. You know, normally I'm next to you on set, but here I am today on Capitol Hill because it's been, you know, a whirlwind here for the last 24 hours. It started yesterday. I remember with it unclear whether there would actually be a deal to end the government shutdown. Fast forward to where we are right now, and the Senate's about to vote on the last procedural vote needed to be able to pass this proposal that was negotiated by 8 moderate Democrats, or I should say 7 moderate Democrats and 1 independent, Angus King, and of course, Republican senators. Once it passes the Senate this afternoon, we know that the House is going to come back at the earliest, by Wednesday to vote on that measure before it goes to President President Donald Trump's desk. What year is it? But to be clear, this has been just a month-long slog for Republicans, for Democrats to try to figure out how to solve this issue of ending this government shutdown. And what it really ended up being was rank and file Democratic senators working with Republicans, Major, to end the shutdown. Democratic leadership does not have buy-in. We're going to see Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer vote against this measure shortly. And of course, we saw House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries also slam this proposal that was negotiated by rank and file Senate Democrats. So it's interesting to see the fact that it was just a handful of moderate Democrats to really get this over the finish line, which is always what Republican leadership expected to happen.
Jeanne Shaheen, Democratic senator from New Hampshire, led this effort for those 7 Democrats and the 1 independent who made this happen. She said today that the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was ready in on all this, knew about all of this, let them do this negotiating, which has led to some consternation about Schumer's leadership. Maybe he should step down or be replaced. Caitlin Huey-Burns, my colleague, talked to Bernie Sanders about that earlier today. Danielle, I want to listen to that sound.
Well, he's leading you all in the Senate right now. Do you think he should be replaced?
By whom? Well, that's the point. The question is if somebody, look, again, Schumer's views are very different than mine. He is an establishment Democrat, no secret. I am not. I hope that by electing new members of the Senate, we will have, in fact, new leadership. But right now, it is what it is.
Daniela, that's a phrase I think a lot of Democrats are going to be uttering all this week. It is what it is.
That's right, Major. I talked to a bunch of House Democrats who are incredibly upset with what took place in the Senate yesterday, what's about to take place when they vote on this proposal. Most House Democrats are going to vote against this measure. Most Senate Democrats are going to vote against this measure. Privately, of course, Democrats that are against this measure recognize that they were probably not going to get any sort of Affordable Care Act subsidy tax credits guaranteed the extension in any sort of proposal that the Senate was going to put forward, considering Republicans have the majority in the House and the Senate and the White House. But the real thing here is that the majority of the base and a lot of Democrats are saying that this is a cave from these moderates that negotiated this proposal, that Democrats have been clear that they wanted those tax credits extended by the end of the year, that Americans are going to be really affected with high premium healthcare costs, and that because this proposal was negotiated by moderate Democrats, they caved on this issue, and it's not guaranteed that they're going to get what they wished for from the beginning.
Certainly no guarantees at all. Daniela Diaz on Capitol Hill. Thanks so very much. We turn now to the White House, where we find Weijia Jiang. Weijia, is the White House under President Trump feeling slightly triumphant this afternoon?
Well, the White House is predicting that at the earliest there could be a shutdown deal sometime Wednesday evening into Thursday morning. And they are optimistic because they continue to blame the Democrats. And President Trump himself said that he was supporting the current bill because it does not include an extension of those health care subsidies that you and Daniela just laid out. And I know you had a montage of sound, Major, but the president himself just spoke a short time ago from the Oval Office about this, so take a listen.
We have support from enough Democrats, and we're going to be opening up our country. It's too bad it was closed, but we'll be opening up our country very quickly.
And senior White House officials also say that the administration has a plan to address some of those concerns about insurance premiums and the Affordable Care Act, and that they will begin to work in earnest on them. But again, stressing that they believe this is all the Democrats' fault, and even said that Basically, they're turning the clock back to September 30th, but nothing substantive has happened since then, except, well, a lot of arguing that we have been covering.
Part of this deal, Weija, as you know, deals with Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program funding through the next fiscal year. The Agriculture Department on Friday said it was going to go forward with that. Then the Trump Justice Department went to the Supreme Court to stop this funding. Where are we with that for the remainder of this week?
Well, it is still going to be tied up in court, Major, because this administration has made very clear that they do not believe legally they can just use some of these contingency funds and deliver the full SNAP benefits that, by the way, a court order issued them to do. So at this point, it seems they are staying firm. They intend to fight this out in court. But it is confusing for many of these states because we've seen so much pull and push about what they are supposed to do, because obviously they also have to take steps to make sure that they are compensated for the funds that their states are entitled to. And so, Major, we just have to see what happens next in court.
When states are confused, you know for sure recipients, beneficiaries are confused as well. One of the many consequences is prolonged shutdown. Weija Jiang of the White House, thank you so very much. Earlier today, I spoke with California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. Let's listen. Congressman, the deal is done in the Senate. You are unhappy. How unhappy are you and why?
Well, I'm unhappy because people's health care premiums are going to spike. Yesterday, when I was at Fort Worth Airport waiting 6 hours because of all the delays, someone came up running to me and he said, look, my father's insurance in Arizona, who's a taxi cab driver, is going to go up from $44 a month to $2,600 a month. That is outrageous. The Democrats should have fought for some help for that taxi driver and for 20 million people around America like that.
How much of this do you put at the feet of Charles Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate?
Most of it. I mean, he's the leader of the Senate. This deal would never have happened if he had not blessed it. Don't take my word for it. Take the word of other senators who are saying that they kept Senator Schumer in the loop the whole time. Look, I've worked with Senator Schumer. He did an incredible job on the CHIPS Act, on the IRA, on infrastructure, but it's time for him to be replaced. He is not meeting the moment. He's out of touch with where the party's base is.
Congressman, you know all shutdowns end, and if Republicans were adamant, as they said they were, that they were never going to negotiate over the health care part of this debate until the government was reopened, what other alternative was there?
Well, I don't think that they would have been intransigent on that. Michael Lawler, a Republican, was floating the possibility of a one-year extension to the Affordable Care Act tax credits. So we wanted a permanent tax credit extension, but could we have gotten 1 year or 6 months? I think so, especially when Donald Trump was reeling. He said that he lost the election because of the shutdown. He was putting pressure on them to get rid of the filibuster. Frankly, we should have at least had them get rid of the filibuster. That would have been a better option. But here we got nothing. And here's the point. Obviously, Senator Schumer entered this thinking that the Republicans were not going to be intransigent. Why else make the Affordable Care Act the purpose of the fight if you thought there was no chance of success?
You mentioned being at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Was a prolonged shutdown, meaning 45 days, 50 days, 55 days, going to be worth it, that damage and disruption to American travel over the Thanksgiving holidays, over this healthcare issue? You were willing to go that far?
I believe we could have gotten a deal before Thanksgiving that would have had some extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, or that would have forced Donald Trump to say, let's get rid of the filibuster. And then the Republicans could vote with 51 Republican senators in the House to do that. What I don't understand is why we are the ones who abandoned a lot of the working class folks who are going to see their premiums go up and didn't put up the fight. That's really what's frustrating. I do think this could have gotten resolved still before the Thanksgiving weekend.
Does it astonish you, Congressman, that after Tuesday's election results, when Democrats did feel emboldened for the first time in a calendar year, this is the result?
It disappoints me. It perplexes me. I guess I just don't understand why we have a group of people who are so out of touch with where our party's base is. They just came out in record numbers to give a win to Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill and Zohran Mamdani. They said, look, Democrats, we want you to stand up to this administration's lawlessness. We want you to stand up for health care. We want you to stand up for working families. We want you to show fight for people against a system that is not working. And we disappointed them. Now, can we recover? Yes. I think that the first step to recovering is to have generational change and new leadership. Someone referred to me as a backbencher calling for the Senate Majority Leader to step down. And I don't think those things personally. Some people were coming saying, oh, Khanna is not a backbencher. But my point was those of us in the back need to come to the front. It's time for a new generation of leadership for this party and this country.
On that point, the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, do you believe he withstands this through this year and all of next year? There's not a scheduled election, as you know, Congressman, until after the midterms. Leadership election.
Look, he's going to make his own. He's going to make his own decision. I doubt I'm on his call list, but if he were to call, what I would say, Senator, we've worked together on the CHIPS Act. I've praised you many times when you have done things that have moved the country forward, but you're not meeting this moment. And I think it's time for someone else to lead in the Senate, and you should serve out the remainder of your term with dignity and working on the issues you care about. I think Speaker Pelosi provides a great model for a graceful way to cap out a career.
I've talked to some Democrats today, Congressman, who have heard from those in the institutional support base, the partisan support base for the Democratic Party. And there is conversation today about a donor boycott because there is so much fury over this deal. Do you believe that will manifest?
I don't know. I do know that the activist base is the one that it really wants a new leadership. I mean, obviously Chuck Schumer has a lot of donors and is a formidable fundraiser, and my guess is that the donor opinion is split. But we need to, as a party, stop listening so much to the donor base. Not that you can't listen to people who contribute, but we're overly focused on that, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're disconnected from grassroots politics.
Democratic California Congressman Ro Khanna, appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Up next, more of our extended coverage of the shutdown saga and its near end, as well as continued airport headaches, thousands of flights delayed or canceled, with more to come. Even after a deal to reopen the government is established, will the system reset in time for Thanksgiving? It's a big question. Silicon Valley Congressman Ro Khanna, you just heard him, told me that Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer has to go. Selective sour grapes or emerging consensus? I'll ask another California Democratic Congressman, Jimmy Gomez. His district, by the way, it's in L.A. Also, who loves a 50-year mortgage? Well, Trump, for one. Would you? Would your bank? CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady walks us through the year-over-year pros and cons. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. Despite progress on ending the shutdown, and that progress is being made in the Senate as we speak, travelers must still confront delays, cancellations, and disruptions because of a shortage of air traffic controllers and in some airports, TSA personnel. 40 of the nation's busiest airports have been ordered to reduce flight loads, and that's going to continue through the week. According to FlightAware, more than 7,000 U.S. flights have been delayed and more than 2,000 canceled today alone. Henry Hartevelt joins me now. He is the founder and president of Atmosphere Research Group, a research and advisory firm serving the global travel industry. Henry, I'm grateful for your time and your expertise. How is the system doing? And the biggest question I think most people have, if the shutdown ends by Thursday or Friday, will the system be able to reset in time for the massive volume on Thanksgiving?
Well, Major, the system is doing its best, but it is getting close to breaking down. As you just pointed out, there have been nearly, in fact, possibly by now, even more than 10,000 delays and cancellations today. Yesterday was equally bad, if not worse. And I'm looking at the data for the top airports, and you're seeing 25% of flights delayed or canceled, 35%, 50% or more at key airports. So this is strangling not just people's abilities to go from A to B, it's strangling the economy. Now, to your question about Thanksgiving, if this shutdown ends this week, early this week, and if the air traffic controllers return, Thanksgiving should be okay. Remember, it's not just the government employees who have to get back to normal. The airlines have to reassemble their flight schedules. Right now, Thanksgiving is intact, but they've got to put everything back together that has been canceled.
And Henry, I believe there's an exponential dimension to this I'd like you to wade into, because today's canceled or delayed flights, but particularly cancellations, those passengers don't go away. I mean, in some cases they might, but they still need to get where they're going, which adds them to the next day's level, which adds to the next day's level. And each day we have 1,000 or 2,000 cancellations. It feels to me like we are adding to the burden as this week progresses.
You're right. There is a cascading effect. If there's an upside to this, airlines have done their best to minimize the impact of the delays and cancellations. So, for example, most of the canceled flights are on smaller planes, the regional jets that fly 50 to 76 passengers. And airlines have also trimmed flights on the routes that have the highest number of flights, the most frequencies, because they're able to reaccommodate those people more easily. We're also in an off-peak time of the year. So United has said, for example, that many of its customers are rebooked on flights departing within 4 hours or so. So airlines are doing their level-headed best to get people where they're going. I'm in Dallas. I live in San Francisco. My flight Saturday was delayed because of a mechanical problem, but I was watching the people at American Airlines do their best to get people rebooked, and they got a lot of those people rebooked on other flights leaving San Francisco for their destinations that day.
As I'm sure you're aware, Henry, the president said on social media he wants to give a $10,000 bonus to air traffic controllers who show up for work. What effect do you think that's going to have tonight, tomorrow, the next day? And do you think it's a good idea overall?
Well, if he's allowed to do that legally, and I'm not an expert on that, then that's a huge incentive. These air traffic controllers have had multiple paychecks with zeros in them. They're not taking home any money now. So a $10,000 bonus, that goes a long way. But that has to be legally approved. If it's possible, great. But if it's not possible, it won't do a darn thing.
I think I know the answer to this, Henry, but what's your advice for those traveling in the next week or so?
Well, first, be patient. Second, be flexible. Make sure you have your airline's mobile app downloaded to your mobile phone. Make sure you check your reservation regularly, especially if you're traveling in the next few days. If you are flexible, if you could postpone your trip into next week or later, you might want to consider doing that, because the rest of this week is still going to be ugly. Hopefully, if we get a resolution to the shutdown, it's going to take the government probably 2 to 3 days for the air traffic controllers to get back to normal. It's going to take airlines probably 3 to 5, maybe 7 days to rebuild the schedules. So you should be okay by the middle of next week.
An unforced error for the travel industry for sure. They are a victim of this. They are just watching and trying to adjust as best they can. And Henry Hartevelt, thank you so much for your expertise. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Major.
President Trump has heard about affordability. Boy, has he heard about it. Last week, he said it was a Democratic con job. But this weekend, he got a flurry of new offers. One of them, a 50-year mortgage with a social media tribute to Franklin Roosevelt's 30-year mortgage. How would that work? We're going to try to find out next here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. As you might recall, last year, President Trump won re-election in part because he promised to tackle inflation. According to CBS News polling, voter concern about the cost of living, which is now referred to under the umbrella term affordability, drove Democrats to big victories last week. That was true for New Jersey Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, and New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Trump had this take about all of that last week.
The affordability is much better with the Republicans. The only problem is the Republicans don't talk about it. And Republicans should start talking about it and use their heads. The whole series of pricing and costs, you know, the groceries and everything else, it was a con job. It was a con job. Affordability, they call it, was a con job by the Democrats. The reason I don't want to talk about affordability is because everybody knows that it's far less expensive under Trump than it was under Sleepy Joe Biden.
Kelly O'Grady joins me now. Kelly, great to see you. Thanks so much for your help. A flurry, I keep using that word because that's the only way to describe it over the weekend. $2,000 checks from tariff revenue, a 50-year mortgage, direct payments to go for health insurance, $10,000 now today for air traffic controllers who showed up for work. The president is trying to wade into this thing that was perceived to be a political problem for Republicans just last Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think about this is the administration trying to address those issues when it comes to affordability. Because, look, he's not wrong. Prices are not rising as much as they did under President Biden. You know, that 9% inflation that we saw in summer of 2022, we're nowhere near that. But it's the fact that prices over the last 5 years have risen more than wages. And that's why people feel that crunch. And when they go to the grocery store, they don't think, oh, well, things are going to get better and we're going to close that gap soon. They just look at what's in front of them. But I think particularly, you know, this idea of the tariff payments is really interesting because there's been a lot of concern. You and I have talked about the consumer sentiment rating a ton, Major, that people are worried about how tariffs will impact prices. A $2,000 dividend could do something to alleviate that anxiety, alleviate some of that crunch, but it also could spur more inflation. Remember, some of that inflation under the Biden administration was stoked by stimulus payments in the pandemic. This could be something similar. And of course, we don't love what that does for the national debt.
No, we do not. What about what the president suggested this weekend and which Bill Pulte, who is the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, said they're working on, and that's the head of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, a 50-year home mortgage?
Well, this kept me really busy today, Major. And as a potential first-time buyer, I was really interested in this. So I did a bunch of research into the pros and cons. The pro is on that affordability front. It makes that monthly payment significantly lower. But the con is that it increases the interest that you pay over the life of the loan, 50 years versus that traditional 30-year loan that we're all used to. It's a lot more. And so critics are saying you're going to build less equity up front in that term. It's going to take you longer to own your home. But proponents are saying, hey, I just want to get in the game. I want to be able to have that ownership. And I go back to FDR and the birth of the 30-year mortgage. That happened right after the Great Depression, and it was to try and make it more affordable to own a home. So definitely a lot of proponents and critics here, but just that idea of taking on so much debt, some people say you might die before you pay off your mortgage.
It is interesting to see the president so favorably compare himself to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, at least on this. Kelly O'Grady, thank you so very much. U.S. forces carried out 2 more strikes on alleged drug boats in the Pacific. Next, how the United Nations is responding. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Here is a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the United States military carried out 2 more deadly strikes on suspected drug boats in the Pacific. This marks the 20th known vessel destroyed both in the Pacific and Caribbean since the attacks began in September. The 6 killed yesterday now bring the total of deaths from these strikes to 76. Today, the United Nations Human Rights Chief urged Washington to investigate the legality of these actions, saying it is quite likely they are, quote, extrajudicial killings, unquote. It's been a journey from being a designated terrorist with ties to al-Qaeda to an Oval Office visit. Today, Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, became the first Syrian leader to visit the White House since it gained independence in 1946. Al-Sharaa led rebel forces and ousted longtime dictator Bashar al-Assad last year. A senior Trump administration official confirms Syria will now be joining U.S. coalition efforts to defeat and contain ISIS. ISIS established strongholds and grew in strength in Syria under the Assad regime. President Trump has pardoned dozens of people who tried to overturn the 2020 election. This includes fake electors at the state level, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, and others. We should note that these pardons are largely symbolic because they apply only to federal charges. No one offered these pardons currently faces federal charges. State-level prosecutions are still ongoing. Next, I'm joined by California Democratic Congressman Jimmy Gomez. His take on the 8 Democratic senators who've joined Republicans to end the shutdown. You see him right there. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. 52 days ago, that was the last time the House was in session and cast a vote of any kind. Tonight, many House members are heading back to Washington per the order of House Speaker Mike Johnson. I'm joined now by California Democratic Congressman Jimmy Gomez. Congressman, your district's in L.A. I want to give my audience a little bit of your biography. You went to community college when you started your educational journey. You worked at a Subway and a Target. Before you got into state and federal politics, you were a union organizer and union political operative. With all that as a background, how does this shutdown deal, negotiated by 7 Senate Democrats and 1 Senate Independent, land with you?
Well, I think it's one of the weakest deals I've ever seen in my life because they didn't get really anything in return. One of the things I've said from the beginning, since the beginning of this year, when everybody was deflated and wondering what the direction of the Democrats would be, I said you have a simple strategy: show up and fight, organize, 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 and then stall or stop the Republican agenda. And that's how we win the American people back, because they want to see us fighting for them, for the working class, fighting every single day. But you got to show up and fight. And this capitulation of these 7, 8 senators shows that they still don't understand the moment we're in. And the moment we're in is that we're fighting for the future of not only our country, but the future of working people. And they want to see us lay everything on the line. They don't care if you lose every single vote. They want to see you put up a fight. Nobody roots for a boxer that says no mas or a team that walks off the field. You got to put up a fight. They put up a fight for 52 days, and then they capitulated at the last minute and still didn't get anything. It doesn't make sense to me. They should have held out. My people, my district told us to hold on, not to capitulate, not to give up, and they appreciated the fight, because that's what this is about, because they know that Donald Trump and Republicans don't care about them.
So if I hear you correctly, Congressman, you would have been prepared, and you believe Democrats in Washington should have been prepared to fight, even if it meant a completely chaotic Thanksgiving travel season and the suspension of SNAP benefits, because the administration went to the Supreme Court to make sure lower court orders providing those benefits were not lived up to.
There's a thing I learned early on: you don't negotiate with legislative terrorists. And one of the things you have with Donald Trump and Republicans, they're definitely legislative terrorists. They don't care if they're going to shoot the hostages or the American people. They don't care what kind of pain they put them in. When it comes to the ACA subsidies increasing on top of the cost of living increasing, or the fact that they attacked SNAP over the last year. The American people know that the Republicans don't care about helping the working class. That one, they cut $200 billion out of SNAP in the one big beautiful bill. They canceled 92 million pounds of food that was already heading to food banks, that was already paid for, that would have fed 12 million people. The American people know that the Republicans keep selling them out for their donors and their largest supporters. So when we push back, they know why we're pushing back. They know that Democrats care about them. They care about the working people. So as long as we keep focused on what this is about, which is the average man or woman on the street, struggling to get by, people who want to see their kids do better, then we're going to win those fights. And here's the thing. Why now? Why after 52 days? We were still a few days out from Thanksgiving. So one of the things I want to say is that my constituents. I was at a food bank handing out food, and people were still telling me, keep up the fight.
This is working its way through the Senate. When it gets to the House later this week, do you expect it to pass, even though you'll be a no?
Not sure, because we don't really know where the Republicans are, right? You had Mike Lawler, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a bunch of them saying they should do something about the expiring ACA subsidies that were increasing the cost of health insurance in their own districts. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I suspect Donald Trump will twist some arms and make sure that the Republicans get on board. But here's the thing, those ACA subsidies, expiring disproportionately impact states, red states that never expanded Medicaid. So they're going to feel it even more. So I think this is bad news for them, even if they are able to pass the CR to get the government open.
I've heard several Democrats tell me today, Congressman, I'd like your opinion of this. We had to end this at one point or another. We elevated the issue of health care. That's a net benefit for us. No one's going to remember about who won or lost this shutdown 3 months from now. We need to move on.
Well, I think one of the things we did do was bring attention to these ACA subsidies. When I say show up and fight, organize, install the Republican agenda, it's to bring the attention of the American people to what's going on in Washington. If not, things happen in the dead of the night, and then Republicans try to blame Democrats. So this fight did bring attention to the fact that the ACA subsidies are expiring, their cost of living is going to go up, that Republicans are using SNAP against them, and Mike Johnson is delaying the swearing in of Alita Grajava to prevent her signing the discharge petition to bring out the Epstein files. So one of the things it did do was bring attention. You know, in the end, who knows? I'm not in the room with the senators, but I would have been fighting every step of the way if I was in those rooms to get the Republicans to come to our side, to get them to cave. But we will never know what would happen if this would have lasted maybe a few more days. So nobody can really truly say that this is what had to happen and this is when the time it had to happen. They could have still played it out a few more days.
Congressman Jimmy Gomez, Democrat, Los Angeles. Appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Of course.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen is one of several Democrats getting a bit of backlash for helping Republicans advance a measure that is moving toward ending this shutdown. Who she's receiving criticism from might surprise you. It's kind of a family deal. That's next here on The Takeout. Welcome back. President Trump became the first sitting president in nearly half a century to attend a regular season NFL game. He did so yesterday. Received what could most charitably described as a mixed response from both Washington Commander and Detroit Lion fans. Listen. That jeering continued as the president read an oath for members of the military to recite as a part of an on-field enlistment ceremony during a break in the game. I want to bring in our reporter panel, Dave Leventhal, contributing editor for Notice Again, News of the United States, Bracken Booker, national political correspondent for Politico. Great to have you both here. So I want to play some sound from Texas yesterday because Greg Abbott announced his bid for re-election. No secret, no surprise there. But he would, if he wins, the longest-serving governor in Texas history. And while he was there over the same weekend, who was in Texas but Gavin Newsom, triumphant California governor and Democrat. Let's play first Greg Abbott, then Gavin Newsom.
And we are a bastion of common sense in a country that is reeling from far-left progressive insanity. Texas is the common sense state in the United States.
We can shape the future here in Texas. We can shape the future here all across the South and across the United States of America. You have that power.
The reason I wanted to show that is a side-by-side of the ongoing dialogue in our country between common sense and insanity. Because Gavin Newsom would say California is common sense. Texas is insanity. Texas says no. Texas is common sense, California is insanity, and that's where this is all heading, in the midterms and in 2028. Okay.
Well, it's almost like Gavin Newsom might be running for something.
You think? I wonder.
Clearly pulled out of the Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez playbook of going to red states and talking very boldly and very openly about their policies, about their priorities, about their vision for the future. Of course, though, if Gavin Newsom does decide to run for president of the United States, he may need a state like Texas to do what it has not done for decades, which is flip the way of Democrats. And I think Greg Abbott has something to say about keeping Texas very, very red.
And Bracken, as part of this ongoing, seemingly never-ending chase of Democrats to find some good news out of a statewide race in Texas. They're looking at the Senate race and other things like that. That's why Gavin Newsom was there.
Well, also, I mean, obviously, Gavin Newsom's taking a victory lap after Prop 50 passed, which is going to counteract what the Texas State House did. So each state is going to find 5 districts that will lean in the individual parties' directions in order to stop or try to prevent the Republicans from holding on to the House as far as like what California's trying to do. So he was there to kind of thumb his nose in Greg Abbott's face. Like, if you can do it, I can do it. And I could probably do it a little bit better since I have a future race that I want to run that's national.
So I want to talk to you about this because it is part of the saga ending the shutdown. Jeanne Shaheen, part of, if not the leader of, the coalition to end the shutdown, teaming up with Senate Republicans. And she got some criticism for that on social media from her daughter, who is running for the House of Representatives. Her daughter, Stephanie Shaheen, said, "I can't support this. I'm not with Mom on ending the shutdown." I mean, that's generational. That's intra-family.
It's going to be a really interesting Thanksgiving. I mean, just a couple of days. They're going to have this out over turkey. Yeah. But yeah, the strategies here seems definitely generational. Like, as your previous interview with Rep. Gomez, like, fight. Democrats want to they want to show some fight, and this is not how you show a fight if you're certainly in the Jeanne Shaheen camp. But look, all the 8 Democrats and 7 Democrats and the 1 independent, they're not up for re-election.
No, they're not. That is the one theme that links all of them. None of them are up in 2026, and those who are not on board with this because they've got to be on the fight side of this equation.
Yeah, and Jeanne Shaheen not only is not up for re-election, but she's retiring.
So is Dick Durbin. So 2 of those are not even seeking re-election of any kind at any time.
But this really speaks to sort of the gerontocracy, if you will, that the Democratic Party is very much having to...
At the leadership level.
To come to grips with, and is probably going to do so in a fairly politically bloody way in 2026. You are absolutely going to have some older, longer-term serving representatives and even senators primaried in a way that a lot of mainstream Democrats would not like, but they're going to get anyway because of that, in essence, traditionalist versus young Gen Z, early millennial movement in the Democratic Party to do something that is going to be akin to, say, a certain mayor of New York City and what just happened there last week.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of what just happened, you did some great reporting on Virginia, and Republicans there in the Commonwealth deeply unhappy, not just with the losses, but with the magnitude of Tuesday's defeats.
Yeah, it's the wiping out of the Republicans in the Commonwealth of Virginia after Tuesday's losses. A lot of blame to go around with Winsome Earl Sears, who a lot of Republicans said was a very flawed candidate. But look, a lot of folks are saying, look, the reason why she got to the nomination was because of Governor Glenn Youngkin helping her get the nomination, kind of clearing the field. So a lot of folks are saying, like, Glenn Youngkin, what were you doing? Did you put in place apparatus to even help the Republicans, or did you just kind of put your name behind the lieutenant governor and then not help her get across the finish line?
Whither Glenn Youngkin? It is a political question, not just for the Commonwealth of Virginia, but nationally for Republicans. Dave Leventhal, Bracken Booker, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Happy Monday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, and more than occasionally clever. The Daily Report starts now.